couple of weeks to do bear camp stuff specifically. I'm not getting paid right now, as you can see. I'm wearing the same brown outfit that Ranger Dave here is wearing. So we're both volunteering and donating our time to Katmai National Park and trying to bring the bear camps, to the audience at home, making this a kind of an interactive phenomenon. So I'm glad to be back. It's Brooks. I left. If anyone's wondering, I left in April, but it gets in your blood sometimes, and you have to come back to certain places because you just fall in love with them. So this afternoon, Dave and I really want to talk about a little bit of the basics of the river here, the basic ecology. We know this is the beginning of the season. A lot of people are tuning into the camps for the very first time. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to cover some of those really interesting dynamics that go on here at Brooks Falls. Why do we have bears here? What are they fishing for? How do they fish? How do they interact with each other? So we wanted to cover a lot of those basic topics. And yeah, if people had questions, how do they submit questions?
Yeah, so if you've got questions, just go ahead and type them into the bar underneath your video screen there, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions we get. Anytime you talk about the ecology of the Brooks Falls area, I think the best place to start is the salmon. We've got sockeye salmon coming through this river mainly. One of the biggest salmon runs in the world go through Bristol Bay.
Bristol Bay has one of the largest and healthiest salmon runs in the world, and most sustainable as well. Mm-hmm. When we talk about Bristol Bay, if you're not really familiar with the geography of where we are in southwest Alaska, Bristol Bay is north of the Alaska Peninsula, and we're on the very top of the Alaska Peninsula. We're about 300 miles southwest of Anchorage, where we are here in Brooks River. Bristol Bay is really kind of like a big giant estuary. It's a very large area. It not only includes the Naknek River watershed, which Brooks River is part of, but it includes other very large rivers like the Queechak that drains Lake Iliamna, the other rivers that drain very large lakes to the south of us. So it's a very big area, and it's largely unaltered by people. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that is really striking to me, is that in a lot of places in the United States, the rivers, the lakes, they're very engineered. They're controlled for reclamation, for irrigation, or for flooding. Out here, these rivers are wild. The salmon that come to Brooks River here, the only bridge that they ever see is the one that's floating at the mouth of the river. And if you've watched our lower river cameras, that little bridge is only 8 feet wide. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty special.
But that's the only thing that these salmon happen to encounter. So, I think the salmon migration and everything about their ecology is, like you said, one of the first places to start, because everything that happens here at Katmai really is dependent on the salmon, except for the volcanoes.
So, if you're wondering maybe where the salmon are right now, they spend about 2 or 3 years of their lives out in the ocean. They're going around the North Pacific Gyre. It's a big ocean current in between the North American continent and the Asian continent, and they spend a couple years out there basically going in circles feeding on plankton. And right now they're going to be just about entering into Bristol Bay, somewhere on the north end of the peninsula, and the ones that are coming here anyway are just about to get here.
We've had some trickling into the river so far. There hasn't been a whole lot of salmon. I mean, some days have more salmon than others. When you're watching the cams throughout the next couple weeks or so, you're not going to see consistent numbers of fish moving into Brooks River. They come in waves, and that depends on a variety of things. One of the things that it does depend on is what the tide's doing out at the mouth of Naknek River, because salmon come in on incoming tides, those high tides. They give it a little bit of extra push to get into the river. Mm-hmm. It's just a little bit easier swimming upstream when the water's going in their direction. So they come in on incoming tides. And then also there's a lot of people that are trying to catch the salmon too out in Bristol Bay. And the fishery is very carefully managed to ensure that enough fish escape up these drainages to sustain the run. The salmon are fairly fecund. For every salmon that comes here to spawn, there may be kind of like 4 fish that really try to return to spawn. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of the fisheries sometimes can catch 3 out of 4 fish, but when the runs are forecasted to be as large as they are right now, we could still have 1 million fish coming into the Naknek River watershed. and about 20% of those go into Brooks River. So if we have 1 million fish coming this year, then we can have maybe 200,000 fish moving through Brooks River. But they, like I was mentioning before, they don't do it on a consistent basis.
Right.
They, you'll see waves of them come in. You'll see sometimes the fish stacked up so thick at Brooks Falls that the bears could walk on them. We could pick them up with our bare hands. It'd be so easy to catch them. But now there are other times, like right now, where maybe there's just not a whole lot of fish in the water. So that's something to watch for too. And you can watch how the bears vary their behaviors based on how many fish are there.
And like Mike said, we've already got some fish coming in. When I go out and look in the water and see in the last couple days how many more fish were here than just a few days ago, it looks to me like a lot of fish. But I think in a week or two here, I'm going to look back and say that was nothing.
Yeah, any day now, really. I mean, I checked the escapement numbers, and you can find that on the Alaska Department of Fish and Game website. I'm sure many of our cam viewers have that bookmarked because they check it on a daily basis like we do. So someone wants to drop that link into the chat, that would be awesome. So you can check that every day. They're counting fish about halfway down Naknek River in the king salmon vicinity, and when those fish are counted, they might take a couple days to get here. So all of a sudden you see a big day with 50,000 fish or 70,000 fish enter the river. We're not going to see that immediately. It may take a couple of days before those fish get here. Depends on how fast they swim. Depends on how confused they get on the way. Because they got to navigate a big lake to find their way here, and then they got to decide whether Brooks River is the right place for them. So they may kind of delay their entry into certain streams here, just kind of depending on if this is the right one or not.
And Mike's been here just a day now, and I'm already learning more and more just from the few hours I've been able to spend with you. But he let me know earlier today that about 20% of the fish that go through the Naknek will come here to this river. So far we've got about 55,000 fish that have come through the Naknek River. 20% of those, that's around 11,000 fish, are going to make it out to here. And it may be the case that not that many have gotten here yet. Sometimes the earlier arriving fish will go out to other tributaries and other areas other than Brooks River.
And the fish, when they come here, not all of them will spawn in Brooks River. In fact, probably most of them will try to jump the falls and go beyond into the tributaries off of Lake Brooks, which feeds Brooks River. There's a lot of spawning action that happens here in September and October. That's really the peak of the spawning activity in Brooks River, but that's not the peak of the spawning activity in a lot of the other streams in the area. So end of July, all those little tributaries of Lake Brooks are going to have a lot of salmon spawning in them. But the salmon in Brooks River here delay their spawning until September, and that's why we have fish here in September, bears here in September, because the bears can catch dead and dying salmon at that time. So we have a very interesting dynamic. Maybe that we'll talk about a little bit later on, about why we have these peaks of bear activity in July, maybe very little, if any, bears in August, and then many bears back here in September.
Yeah, and it's been amazing just how quickly the bears are starting to show up in accordance with the fish. I'd say just from my observations, it looks as if the fish have maybe doubled in number, maybe tripled in number since a week ago, and that's been reflected exactly by the number of bears that I've been seeing.
And the sorry, I lost my thought. Anyway, go ahead.
So I'd say maybe an average of, cam viewers could probably give a better estimate than me, but I'd say we'd have an average of 3 bears at the falls in a given time of day.
Yeah, I think the most I saw at the falls last evening, and I was only there till 8:30. I had to leave for a meeting, but yeah, three bears is pretty typical right now. The most I've ever seen from the Brooks Falls platform is within my line of sight, not counting cubs, is 22. So I'm looking upriver, downriver, and the camera can't see everything that a person standing there can actually see. The lines of sight are just a little bit different. But yeah, we haven't reached peak bear time yet. Peak bear time is usually the middle of July. It's almost like magic that they know that the fish are here.
Yeah.
And it's not magic. It's built into their rhythms, their lifelong circadian rhythms. Seasonally, they know where to look for different food resources, and right now they know that the salmon are supposed to be here. So that's why more and more are migrating. And almost every day we can probably see different bears. Like there's some walking below us right now. We're standing on the Briffles platform, which is about 100 yards downstream. This is an exciting time, and that's why I came back now versus the end of the month, the end of July, because there's so much going on right now. It's so exciting to see that not only the salmon arrive, but bears catch that very first fish of the year, I love to see that. You can almost see the satisfaction. I don't think we can imagine hunger most of us anyway. It's quite like a bear because they fast for 6 months or more.
I've gone about 6 hours without eating, and
Okay.
that was about enough for me.
So there are a few orders of magnitude greater than you. But yeah, to see that on, when they catch that first fish and see how quickly they eat it, a 5-pound salmon they sometimes can eat in less than a minute. That amount of hunger is maybe hard for me to really imagine. But bears kind of exist, their minds and their bodies almost. It's not a different world, but it's certainly a very different set of rules maybe that they live by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we've started to see. I've started to see already a few different fishing techniques being used. I haven't seen all of them. If you're not familiar with the different kind of ways that bears might choose to fish, there's, I don't know, maybe 5 or 7 or so different fishing techniques that we've been able to observe here.
And there could be more that they invent.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Fishing techniques are, you'll see every bear has its own sort of unique suite of fishing techniques that they rely on. Some bears are very good at fishing all over the place. Most bears aren't, though. Most bears are kind of specialists.
Mm-hmm.
They prefer one spot, maybe because it's the best spot to be, the most productive spot to be. Perhaps that's just because that's the only place they learn to fish.
Or maybe that's their favorite spot is one that's been available to them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because there's a lot of competition that goes into where you can put yourself at Brooks Falls. So a bear fishing on the lip, for instance, that took a lot of time and skill to learn, for sure. There aren't many bears that fish the lip of Brooks Falls. So you'll watch for many of those bears that can do that. But the bears that are fishing down below Brooks Falls, especially in that plunge pool, right below the lip where the bears stand to catch the salmon jumping into their mouth, that's usually the most productive place for bears to catch salmon, because even if there's no salmon jumping at the falls, there's almost always salmon kind of pooling around in the jacuzzi.
Stacking up, waiting to jump the falls.
And I don't know, did you get a chance to go in the jacuzzi in the spring?
No. I did not venture that far. Yeah.
The river's always cold, so we kind of need a warm sunny day like today to try to really try to do that. I've been in the jacuzzi. People can kind of look up some of the live chats that maybe we've done with that. The jacuzzi is just it's a froth. I mean, it's just full of bubbles. It can be very disorienting for fish. It takes a pretty big bear to be able to put themselves in that position. And when they're sitting in that spot, we kind of call that technique, and you'll see a lot of bears doing that. They're just sitting and they're waiting for fish to come to them. They're conserving energy. They're not really expending any extra energy sitting in the water than they would be sleeping in the forest, because they're so massive. So they don't cool down really rapidly like you and I would. And when they're sitting in the water, they're waiting for the fish to bump into them. They're doing it by feel, because you can't see through the bubbles that are there. So they're really just waiting for the fish to come to them.
And some of those large bears will sit there for hours. I've seen other smaller bears try to take advantage of that spot, and they can't physically wait there. They get pushed by the current. So you have to be a really big, large, dominant male bear to be able to hang out in there for a long time and make it worth your while.
And you'll see sometimes smaller bears, younger bears try that spot, try the jacuzzi, and then as soon as a more dominant bear welts up, they're displaced from that spot. They either yield voluntarily because they can smell or see this other big guy coming along, or the big guy throws his weight around and says, you know what, this is my spot and you need to back off. So yeah, fishing the lip and the jacuzzi, the far pool, there's a lot of different places for bears to stand in that. And then we have like a lot of younger bears that maybe can't compete for fishing spots up at Brooks Falls, and we'll see them doing some interesting things too.
Yeah, we've seen particular bear 89, nicknamed Backpack. He's been very successful over in the far pool, kind of standing and waiting. And he'll wait for a fish to swim close enough to him where he's standing in water just a foot or so deep, and he can pounce on it and pin it against the ground. And he's been really quite successful so far.
One of those other interesting features to look for on the Brooks Falls cam is to look for those really young small bears, the ones that we call sub-adult bears. They are, the teenagers of the bear world. they're independent of their mother bear, so the mother's no longer caring for them, but they're not fully mature bears. They're generally 2.5 to 5.5 years old. They'll be kind of slinking along the edges of the river. They may hover on the fringes of Brooks Falls, but those bears certainly are very easily displaced by larger, older, more experienced bears. So you'll see them maybe picking up fish scraps that the other bears leave behind, but rarely will they be able to compete for spots at Brooks Falls. So those are the bears that are really fun to watch, because sometimes they're the ones that are maybe they'll try things out for the first time. They'll try the jacuzzi, and maybe the water just pushes them away. Maybe they'll go up to the lip and they'll be like, I saw my mom do this, I'm not quite sure about this myself. So you'll see that, and then downstream too, you'll see them kind of hovering on the fringes. So a lot of different fishing techniques. One that we shouldn't forget though, and I don't know if you had a chance to see it, you probably have because it happens a lot at this time of the year, is pirating, right?
Pirating. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
But so pirating is when, actually, you know what, I did see that once, kind of. So a pirating is when a bear essentially steals fish from another bear. Usually it's a larger, more dominant male that can come through and steal a less dominant bear's meal. So he doesn't have to do any of the work of actually catching the fish. He just approaches, the other bear will take off or maybe try to defend its catch a little bit, but in the end, the big bear will go ahead and take it from him. I did see that just yesterday. 747 actually stole a fish from 89.
Oh, did he?
89 went up and into the trees to eat his catch, and immediately 747 just kind of sniffed the air and took on after him and chased him out of there, and it looked like he was able to successful steal that meal.
Yeah, and some bears, that's a very effective technique for them. It's something you can label them as bullies, but we really shouldn't be judging that behavior based on what a bully is for people, because that's one of those strategies that helps big bears survive and gain calories that they need to compete for females. Yeah, it happens. It's maybe not pleasant to watch. It's maybe not fair, but again, bears don't live in a fair world. They live in a world that's outside of our rules of ethics and morals.
Yeah.
There's no really, they're not going to be nice to one another along the way. So they need to take advantage of any strategy that they can to survive, because this really is no game for them. It's very fun for us to watch the bears fish at the falls, and it's kind of funny when a salmon jumps up and hits a bear in the face, on the lip of the falls. But it's definitely no game to them. This is serious business for them, and every calorie counts when you only eat for 6 months out of the year.
Mm-hmm. It counts for their survival, and it also counts for their ability to reproduce. If you wanna pass on your genes in the bear world, you've got to be the biggest, baddest bear. Or one of the biggest, baddest bears. And so right now we're still in the mating season
Definitely,
for bears.
yeah.
That's going to be between May and July. So you might be able to see some courting bears this time of year. What that looks like is you're going to have a big male following a female around the river. It's pretty rare to actually see the mating itself occur, although it does happen.
Yeah, maybe once or twice a year it might be caught on the cam, some bears mating. It does happen. Sometimes it's love at first sight. Two bears just walk down the river. They're like, okay, you look good, I look good. Yeah, it's the right time. But most of the time, it's actually a really kind of prolonged process, the courtship that bears go through. And it really is, the males will follow the females
for weeks sometimes, right?
Yeah. I think the longest that I've ever noted was, I think 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I noted every day a male bear was following a female. Most of the time it's less than that, but it can be, a couple of weeks. The male is really trying to, get the female to accept his close proximity, because any other time of the year, he's a threat for food, or maybe to her cubs if she has them. So that's kind of a weird thing when you have this giant bear following you.
I'd be pretty wary if a giant bear was following me.
Yes, exactly. And she might not be, receptive to mating right at that time. There's a cycle that they do go through. They're ready to mate right at that moment in time. So that's a prolonged process. But yeah, June is the peak of the mating season for bears, and we'll definitely, I think, see some courting behavior over the next week or so, and probably into middle of July, sometimes late July. But right now, definitely is one of those things to watch for. So if you see a big bear following a smaller bear, it might not be a female following her cub. It could be a big male following a female, looking for the opportunity to mate.
Yeah, it can be hard to tell sometimes because those males are just so large compared to any other size bear.
Well, yeah, bears are sexually dimorphic as far as like size goes. So a big male brown bear here, if you're just tuning into the cams for the first time this year, the big bears that we have here on the Alaska Peninsula are some of the biggest in the world. It's really hard to judge how big these animals are when you're watching on the cams or even on the wildlife viewing platform here. What really strikes me on how big they are is when I'm on the ground and we see them in the woods or something like that, walking down the trail, and you're like, wow, that is a monster animal. Average midsummer weight for our largest bears here, 700 to 900 pounds for males. A big bear like 747, 814 lurch, 856, they're going to be approaching that 900-pound range, 900 pounds right now.
Right now,
yeah,
Yeah.
right now. So that again, that's a midsummer weight for them. They're probably at their lowest weight right now because they've been losing so much,
Right.
and there's no food, not a lot of nutritious food for them until the salmon arrive.
and even after they come out of their den, they're still losing weight
Yes.
because they're not
Yes.
able to eat that protein, fat, calorie-rich salmon yet.
So yeah, in the fall they may put on, the big males will put on at least 200 or 300 pounds. Females are about a third smaller than the males. So 400 to 600 pounds. That's a pretty good sized female for a late July weight. I think so they're big animals regardless of where you view them, how you view them. They're very big. They're very intimidating. They're massive. So cool to see just how big they are.
Yeah, and to see video and photos of bears in the fall, and then to see them now, you can really, it's very impressive how different they look. A bear like 410, one of the more successful female bears here, she doesn't look like the same bear almost. I mean, you can tell different facial features and things like that, but her belly at the end of the fall is just, it's a ball. It's huge. It's really pretty amazing.
That's always fun to watch. We encourage everyone to watch not only in July here when bears are fishing at the falls, but throughout the summer too, because we have a lot of bears fishing here in July, and you can see from beginning of July to the end of July that they've gained weight. But when they disperse to fish in other streams during August, and they come back to fish for the dead and dying salmon in September and October, that difference between the end of July and September is very extreme. So tune in to the camp not only in July when we have the peak of bear activity at Brooks Falls, but tune in September when the bears are fishing, typically further downstream towards the mouth of the river for dead and dying salmon, and you get to see that just giant difference between early summer and late summer and fall before they go into their dens.
Yeah. So, you ready for some questions?
Well, I think there's one more thing that we want.
What's that? What am I missing here?
Well, some of those stories that we want to encourage.
Right. Of course.
To watch throughout the summertime, because on the bear cams here, one of the really unique things about bear watching at Brooks River is that we know a lot about these bears on an individual basis, and you've heard us throughout the chat talk throughout some numbers, maybe some nicknames here and there. There's been a bear monitoring long-term study and program here at Brooks River and Katmai National Park for about almost 30 years now. Almost 30 years. It's between 25 and 30. Looking at the bears, how they use the river, identifying them on an individual basis. We do that through their distinctive features, fur color, ear shape, scars that they have, their overall size, their disposition. There's a bunch of different things that we can look at. And we take photographs of them. And when those bears come back from year to year, we can see how they change. We see how they interact with one another. We see how they raise cubs here. Sometimes those cubs come back to fish at the falls. Sometimes they don't. But we know that's really the thing that makes bear watching here unique, if you go to the Pacific side of Katmai National Park, there may be some bears that people see every year, but no one really knows much about those animals on an individual level. That's, kind of the remarkable thing about watching wildlife here at Brooks River, because any of those bears that are in the river, we may see a chase scene coming downstream. I think they're going to disappear into the forest.
Huh.
But those bears that are chasing each other upstream right now, the one that was being chased was raised here as a cub. The one that was the chaser was just a kind of tiny, goofy looking subadult, and now he's one of the most dominant bears along the river. So we do encourage everyone to watch these animals as individuals, not only just as bears that can teach us all about the survival and the competition that they have to go through to make a living at Brooks River, but also what they can teach us on an individual level. A couple years ago, we had a bear adopt another bear.
Mm-hmm.
Rare event. It's not unprecedented, but it doesn't happen very often. We got to see that family a lot on the cameras, and that was kind of amazing. You get to see the successes like that maybe happen, the females that raise their own offspring. We also get to see some of the struggles, too. We get to see females that lose cubs. Sometimes it's possible that, a bear could, kill another bear on the cameras. So those are those stories where, not only is Katmai preserving the really grand spectacles of nature, but it's also preserving those ecological processes that are sometimes very hard for us to watch. Mm-hmm. But if you want to know more about the individual bears here along the river and get to know them, right below the comment section on explore.org. So if you're watching the Bear Cam, any of our Bear Cam channels on explore.org, scroll down right above the comments, and there's some links for some more info, and one of them is for the ebook for the Bears of Brooks River. So we updated that this spring over the winter, and you can we try to include almost all of the well-known bears that you see here at Brooks River, so you can learn more about their stories. And when we're talking more about bears throughout the summer, we'll be name dropping here and there. And if you don't know who it is, you can look it up. I should also mention too, before we get to some questions, one quick thing: that if you don't know a bear, it's not a big deal. Just enjoy it, and that's kind of what I do when I see a bear that walks into the river, and I'm not sure if I recognize it or not. I just kind of sit back and relax. Maybe I can tell if it's male or female. Walks into the river, and I'm not sure if I recognize it or not. I just kind of sit back and relax. Maybe I can tell if it's male or female. Maybe I can. If you can't identify a bear, that's okay. They'll still be able to teach you a lot about the bear world. So, no matter what, following these stories of these animals is one of the most fascinating things about bear watching here at Brooks River. So I do encourage everyone to download that book and try to get to know some of the bears as individuals. I think it'll really enhance your experience.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a lot of really great just background information on bears in general, on the area here, all in that ebook. So it's a really good place to start if you're interested in learning more about Brooks Camp, about the bears here, and if you want that added bonus of being able to really get more involved and follow the individual life histories of these animals.
Absolutely. And we're just about a half hour in to our chat. We're going to try to stick with everybody for at least a full hour.
Mm-hmm.
We'll maybe go a little bit longer. We don't want to. There's a tremendous support staff on working behind the scenes at explore.org that helps to make all of this possible. So we're very thankful for them. And Dave and I know that we could talk for probably a few hours on what's going on here on the river, but we can't keep them all night. So we will cut it short at around an hour or so. But we'll try to answer viewer questions for the rest of the half hour here. Again, my name is Mike, and Dave is joining us, and we're park rangers here at Katmai National Park. We had some questions in the queue from earlier, and we might get a few of those. But if you want to submit additional questions for us, there's a moderator from explore.org who is looking at the chat and sending us questions. So just scroll down to the bottom of the page on any of the Bear Camp pages on explore.org. You can submit your question there, and we'll do our best to try to answer as many of those as we can. Mm-hmm. Roy and I got through 20. Do you think we can do that?
I think that's a good number to shoot for.
Okay, we'll see if we can break the record. We never did. There's always 20%.
Just right around there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first question that I got lined up here is: are there rangers on the viewing platforms during public hours? And the answer to that would be yes. For the most part, we've got the platform staff from at least from 9 to 5, depending on the platform. Outside of those hours, the platforms are still open. They're open till 10 o'clock at night. So there are times when they're not staffed, but we do our best to keep them staffed as much as possible.
Yeah, rangers got to go to bed sometimes. We just don't have like enough staff to cover it 24/7. So the Falls Platform Complex, and you can find more information about this on Katmaya's website. But there's 2 wildlife viewing platforms up here at Brooks Falls. There's one that we're standing at about 100 yards downstream of the falls, that we call the Riffles platform because of the riffles in the river right behind us. And then the main falls platform, which is upstream, we're kind of right on top of where the bears fish for salmon. And this whole boardwalk platform complex up here closes at 10 p.m. and it opens at 7 a.m. and it's closed really during those at night during those hours to allow the bears that really don't show a lot of tolerance for people the opportunity to come down and fish. The webcams allow us that amazing opportunity to watch those bears like we never have before. Biologists occasionally would do some overnight survey sessions at Brooks Falls. There's a great post by a ranger last year who participated in one of those on Katmaya's blog. So you can look that up. It's from July or August last year. So you can look that one up if you want to. The platforms are closed at night to allow those bears who just aren't tolerant of people the opportunity to fish here. And that's an important thing that we need to remember to protect. It's just not those bears that waltz through the river and maybe have a fairly high tolerance for large groups of people. We also need to make sure that we give room to the bears that just don't show that same level, because there's a significant number of that population that doesn't.
And that study will continue with Leslie.
Yes, absolutely.
This year. I'm hoping that I'll be able to join her on one of those study sessions and hopefully tell you all about how it goes.
Yeah, we'll maybe even try to interview her for one of
definitely.
these live chats, so you can get a kind of an in-depth understanding of that bear monitoring program, because it's ongoing. It's fascinating. Going through the database that they have, you can really glean some very interesting information. And the information that's in the bear identification book that I plugged earlier, that's basically drawn off all of that information and the other stuff that rangers see here. And some of the things that cam viewers have observed too, because there's a lot more of you than us, and you see some cool stuff from time to time.
Yeah. Next question is actually about Ranger Leslie. Has she spotted 435's biological cub and given it a number yet?
Talked to her?
I haven't. So I've heard reports that maybe we've seen the biological cub. I haven't talked to Leslie specifically to see if that individual bear has been given a number yet. We haven't verified necessarily that is the subadult that we've been seeing.
Okay. Yeah, and younger bears there's some of those bears that are the trickiest to identify on a yearly basis, because they grow so rapidly. Oftentimes they don't have as many distinctive features as the older bears. Certainly a lot of the big males that are up here at the falls right now are, they have open wounds, they have scars, things like that make them very identifiable, pretty easy to identify. There's one bear that's missing an ear. He's the only one that we know about on the river that's missing an ear. So you don't mistake him for anyone else.
Yeah.
But those younger bears, they're smaller, they don't have a lot of those distinctive features. And a lot of those younger bears that are just weaned from their mother emancipates them, pushes them away. They may not come back to Brooks River, especially if it's a male. If it's a subadult male bear, they're much more likely to roam far and wide, trying to establish their own home range. With that being said, there are definitely male bears here that were raised as cubs, so they don't all disappear into the wilderness. They definitely will come back to the river, but there's a distinct possibility that 435's cubs that she weaned in the spring won't come back, and we don't see them, and that's natural. That doesn't mean they're dead or anything bad has happened to them. That means that they're maybe just out doing bear things somewhere where we just don't happen to know where they are.
Yeah.
So again, another one of those stories for people to watch too. 435 is a very famous bear because he adopted a cub, an abandoned cub, in 2014. Had them last year in 2015 as well, and now she emancipated them in the springtime. And I missed them. I wasn't here when they showed up around camp all together as a family, so that was really cool to see those pictures.
Yeah, when they finally did split, the adopted cub, now subadult, he was just about as big as 4 through 5.
Yeah, he's a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah.
And the bears here grow really rapidly. A spring cub, for example, those new cubs that you're going to see on the cams, and we have many mothers with spring cubs around this year. When they're born, they only weigh about a pound. They're born like at end of January, February sometime. When they come out of the den, they maybe weigh a dozen pounds or so, 15 pounds, 20 pounds at most. When they go into the den in the fall, they weigh about 60 pounds.
Yeah.
So they're, or more. The ones that we've had, the dead ones that maybe we found here on the river and we've weighed, have weighed over 60 pounds, and they don't look like they're particularly large spring cubs. So I don't think it's uncommon to say that, yeah, a spring cub in the fall here is going to weigh 60 plus. So they grow extremely rapidly, and after 3 years, 4 summers or something like that, a bear is going to weigh, maybe at least double the weight of me. They're going to be between 200 and 300 pounds pretty easily.
Yeah. So let's keep moving on these questions here. On average, how many fish does a bear catch per day?
It depends on how many fish are there, and how good you are at catching them, and whether you can occupy the best fishing spots. The most I've counted, and this is actually last year, if I remember correctly. Sometimes I'll go to the falls platform after I'm done working. Not sometimes, actually most times. I will go to the falls platform in the evening when I'm done working and go watch bears.
You can say every night. It's okay.
Every night, yeah. And so one time I did it for 5 hours. I didn't leave for 5 hours. I counted 856 in the jacuzzi. He was there the whole time, and he caught and consumed 20 whole fish.
Wow.
Each one of those sockeye are 4,500 calories. So he was taking in 90,000 calories in 5 hours, which is amazing. And he's eating the whole fish. He wasn't doing the thing that we call high grading, where I'm kind of full, so I'm just going to eat the fatty parts. I'm going to eat the brain. I'm going to eat the skin. I'm going to eat the eggs. He was eating the whole darn fish. It was really kind of an amazing thing to see. And he's so dominant. Over the past several years, he's been the most dominant bear on the river. Trying to displace him. All the other bears give him space. So that's one of those big advantages that the really big dominant male has over all of those other males. And all the other bears here at the river is they can occupy those spots and they can do their thing and really not have to worry about the other bears, because they've already competed with those other bears and they've already outcompeted those other bears. So as many as 20 fish in a day, and that was before. I don't know how many he ate before.
Yeah, that was only 5 hours of the day.
So he could have been there in the morning gorging on fish too. So who knows? At least 20. It'd be great one day if we had we can point another camera at one bear the whole day and just count on a good fish day and see, one of those big dominant males, how many fish that they eat. It'd be kind of cool if we could put a counter on the cam, and every time it would be like it would ding, every time it catches one, fish count, So I don't know, something to think about. Maybe we can try to figure that out later in the year.
That'd be awesome. All right, another kind of related question. Apart from salmon, what do the Katmai brown bears smell like? And I can't answer that question because I have almost no sense of smell.
So what do the actual bears?
Yeah, what do the bears smell like?
When they're not eating salmon, they're kind of just like animal-like. When they're eating salmon and they're kind of covered in salmon gore and slime and things like that, they smell like wet animal, wet dog covered in salmon gore. It's kind of like a half-rotten salmon smell covered in wet dog. When they're resting beneath the platforms, sometimes we can smell that. If a bear's been resting in the forest along a trail and you're walking along, sometimes, I'll smell it. My nostrils, I'll flare my nostrils and I think there's a bear. It's either really close or it's been really close very recently. The scat that you've been seeing around in the spring, that's all filled with grass. Practically odorless. At least you haven't noticed.
It looks like horse scat, something like that. Yeah.
When they're eating salmon, their scat that's filled with salmon is very smelly. They've started to eat salmon. Yeah, it's kind of a combination of a lot of like big wet animal and salmon smell. That's the best way I can describe it. Not a succinct way to describe it.
I think it's a pretty good description. I don't think I want to. I'm glad I have. Another question. 402. That's a bear that showed up this season with 3 spring cubs and is down to 2 now. The question is, what could have happened to that third? I'm sorry. Showed up with 3 yearling cubs. Is now down to 2. What could have happened to that third cub? Could it have been eaten by another bear? Gotten sick? What are some of the possibilities that happened there?
Yeah, I don't know if you had observed. Did you have a chance to see her, like, since she's come back with just 2? I don't know if anyone were there any reports of her, like, looking agitated or anything like that?
Yeah. So so the first time I saw her was a couple weeks ago, hanging out on the beach, sleeping with the 3 yearlings. The next day, we saw 2 yearlings bolt through camp right down. 10 seconds later, what I think was 402 was falling right after him, huffing, looking very, very stressed out. I'm not positive that it was 402. That's what it looked like to me. And soon after that, we saw yearlings.
Yeah, so sometimes we know, sometimes we observe something along the river, and we can say, yeah, that's what happened to the cub. Most of the time, we just have no idea. So we can speculate, but we can't get the definitive answer. Bear cubs die from a variety of reasons. They get injured just by making a mistake. They fall out of a tree, by avalanches. They can drown. Those really, especially those small cubs, they're not very strong swimmers compared to mom. So that can happen. They get sick. There are illnesses that they can die from. But of course, bears do kill other bears, and we have documented that along the river, where a male bear will kill a cub. Maybe as often as it's portrayed, as that you're likely to see it, in the cams at some point in time. It's never happened yet. It's not one of those things that you can expect to see, every summer here on Brooks River. Most of the spring cubs that are lost are probably lost in the springtime. When I say lost, I mean, that means they're probably dead. But yeah, from a variety of reasons. With a yearlings also can be vulnerable to what is called really essentially infanticide. From another bear possibility too. In 402 situation, we just don't know. Last year she had 4 of them, which is, a tremendous, a burden on her energetically to try to care for those 4 spring cubs. And she had all 4 still in October the last time we saw them, which was, usually better than average. Now she's down to just 2. So the majority, but a lot of times that cuteness and that playfulness really does mask the serious risks that they end up facing throughout their lives. It's a tough life for a spring cub, or a yearling cub. It's a tough life to be a bear, and that why male bears kill cubs, we don't really know. We have some theories. I tried to put some of those theories into the Bear ID book, so you can look up a little short essay that I wrote in there about that. But a lot of people speculate and hypothesize that it could be for food. Certainly they kill them and they eat them, but that's not always the case. We've seen them kill them and just leave them. Sometimes people say they are just maybe doing it to if a female, I should back up and say, if a female loses all her cubs, she may go back into estrus and be receptive to mating. So sometimes people think it's like a sexually selected infanticide. So they will kill all the, a female's cubs, and then a week later, 2 weeks later, maybe she'll go back into estrus and he can sire more offspring.
But we've also seen female bears kill cubs.
Yes, and female bears have been documented to kill cubs too, which that doesn't make sense for the sexually selected infanticide. And I've also seen a male bear kill a cub of a female that he mated with the year before. And we have no evidence that a male bear can recognize his offspring. females certainly know their offspring, but we don't have any evidence that suggests the male knows, hey, those are mine. So he could have been killing his own offspring. Other people say they do it to reduce competition. That seems like it may be plausible. I'm not convinced that's the case. Bears, are certainly thinking animals. I don't think that they're just unconscious, genetically programmed. Everything they do is based on genes. There's probably some simple thoughts going on in there, but whether they have the capacity
To plan ahead.
to say I'm going to kill that cub because in 5 years
Right.
it could be displacing me, or 10 years, I don't know. So that one's a little bit harder for me to buy. So there's a variety of reasons, but the short answer is it's kind of an unexplained. But there's arguments you can make for all of those ideas, and then other ways you can argue against those things. But if you are watching the cams, again, that's one of those harsh realities that could happen on the cameras. So we see a lot of really great things on the cameras, but we see bears get injured. We see bears occasionally here on Brooks River kill one another too. So there can be some tough watching and painful watching here and there.
Yeah. I don't know if we're gonna get to 20, but
Okay.
we're gonna do our best.
We're going to do a wrap.
All right. Next question is: I know that ears back and bowed ears show submission in bears. What other bear behaviors can we watch that show dominance or submission?
It's kind of fun to watch those signs. A lot of times it's subtle. A dominant bear usually approaches another bear with really kind of a directed approach. It's not trying to avoid it. It looks right at it and it says, "Hey, you know me?" Huh? It just, it's kind of like it's getting right in that other bear's face. Their ears, in a lot of cases, are the dominant bear's ears are forward. A defensive bear or a bear that's being submissive is going to have their ears back. And I know there's going to be screen captures of these. There always are. It's of me with my hand positions. But ears forward for maybe sometimes a bear that's acting dominant. Ears back for a more defensive bear. Maybe head up for oftentimes for a more dominant bear. Maybe head lowered for a more defensive bear. And when bears are competing with one another, it's the more dominant bear that walks away that ends the encounter. So sometimes you'll be watching and it's easy to mistake the bear, but the bear really breaks off. The dominant bear breaks off the encounter, and it really only stays in that spot if it wanted that spot. So
I kind of liken that too. I'm so tough. I don't even need to look at you. I can just turn my back on you, and I'm not afraid of you.
And they'll say, you're basically just ignoring the other bear, just saying, I don't think you're a threat.
Right.
I'm going to turn my back on you. It's really just kind of like putting up a hand and walking away from somebody. It's that almost that equivalent. Look for bears to turn their back on one another. The more dominant bear is going to do that. The submissive bear is not. They're going to sit there and kind of and take it. They're just going to sit there and watch what the other bear does. Unless they're, the dominant bear is competing for a fishing spot or a female, it's going to be the one that's going to break off the encounter. So if a dominant bear like 856 or 747 wants the jacuzzi, that it's going to displace that other bear from the jacuzzi, and that bear is going to walk away, and the more dominant bear is going to stay put. So over a fishing spot, they're going to stay put, but if it's in the middle of the river and it's just something where the dominant bear is trying to remind the other one or establish its dominance over another one, then it's going to break off the encounter.
All right, next question. Were there any bones left from the big male that died on the spit last fall? I know I went out and looked for some. I wasn't able to find anything. That doesn't mean there wasn't anything there, but it really is amazing how efficiently things get cleaned up just by nature. The bugs, the birds, other mammals. There's nothing wasted. It all gets used.
I know there was a backbone last fall. People had, or spring, sometime in the winter. I can't remember. A couple rangers came out the Brooks River and took a picture of the backbone that was left of the bear that died on the spit. We actually have a skull in king salmon, and we're letting the beetles and the maggots kind of clean it up for us before we can use it as a display somewhere. There wasn't anything left at all. And even the salmon here that are in the river, none of that goes to waste. It's all eventually recycled. The bears kind of seem gluttonous and wasteful a lot of times when they leave a salmon carcass. But for them, again, they're maximizing their caloric profit because fat, ounce per ounce and gram per gram, fat has a lot more calories in it than an equal weight of carbohydrates or proteins. So the salmon flesh, the fillets that we really like to eat, those are not the most fatty parts of the fish. It's the skin, the brain, and the egg. So when a bear is really, really well fed, having a good day, then it's going to strip the skin off, eat the brains and the eggs, and it's going to leave the carcass behind. And sometimes it's like, oh, I can go in the river and pick that up and cook it. It's so well filleted already for me.
I don't think that. But that process allows other animals to eat too.
Exactly.
We can eat the seagulls, the bald eagles, trout get really fat off of all this salmon that's been killed and is now just floating down the river.
Juvenile salmon will feed on salmon flesh. They'll feed on salmon eggs. The rainbow trout here get fat because there's so many salmon in the water itself. The younger bears that can't compete for the really big or for the best fishing spots at Brooks Falls, they're going to be the ones cleaning up those carcasses too. So eventually nothing goes to waste. There's really good fishing days when the bears are really getting full and there's maybe like 24 salmon carcasses on the island downstream of the falls. The next day they'll be all gone. Once that big pulse of salmon moves through, the bears will get hungry again, their stomach's empty pretty quickly, and they'll come by and they'll clean all that stuff up. So yeah, again, nothing goes to waste, like you said.
Yeah. All right, moving along. Rangers saw that about 30,000 salmon were counted by commercials about 3 days ago in the Neck River. Where are they now? I'm not sure.
Well, they're probably on their way here. There was a big surge of I can't remember the exact numbers. A couple days ago there were one of the larger surges of fish into the Naknek River. I think we were talking about that this morning. Seems like it takes 2 days or so maybe for the fish to swim here. Not exactly sure if that's the case.
So they can go about 30 miles a day maximum, and it's about
60
miles, so
here,
minimum 2 days. I would think.
Yeah, so they're on their way, or they may not come to Brooks River. They may be going somewhere else. So that's a possibility. We get a lot of salmon early in the run here, but they could be going someplace else. So I'd expect that maybe we could see some fish. Maybe there's some of them in there right now. We can see a lot at the mouth of the river when we're walking across the bridge there. I haven't had a chance to see if bears are catching fish at the falls today, or if there's a lot of salmon jumping or not. So some of those fish could already be here too, if they entered a couple days ago.
Yeah, and I've already seen, it was just one, but I saw one salmon that had already turned red and the green head, and it's already transformed to its spawning form. So there's quite a bit of variation in what each subpopulation of fish will do.
Yeah, they're going to spawn at different times. The Brooks River here, the salmon delay their spawning until September and October, which is unusual for a lot of the other streams in the area. Most of the other streams nearby, the salmon they go in, they spawn, that's it, and it's over like in a matter like a week. Brooks River here, the salmon, they'll stage at the mouth of the river. They'll stage up in Lake Brooks and maybe swim downstream back into Brooks River. So they delay their spawning maybe until the water's a little bit cooler. It's closer to fall and winter because the egg incubation period is determined by water temperature. So if they're spawning when the temperatures are warmer, maybe their eggs will incubate too quickly. Maybe they'll hatch at the wrong time, something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit of a different dynamic here. August is a time where we don't see a lot of bears here, even though there's a lot of fish. It's not that there's no fish here, it's just that they're not accessible at that time of the year. So at the end of July, you'll start to see a lot of bears dispersing away from Brooks River to fish in some of those smaller streams that do have accessible salmon. The salmon in August are energetic and they're very dispersed. So when you have low densities of fish and high energy fish, that equals poor fishing conditions for bears. And that's why we don't see a lot of bears here in August. And sometimes there are days when we go without seeing bears at all.
All right.
How many so far?
I think that's about, I skipped a couple. I'm going to say 15.
Okay. Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Keep on going.
All right. What effect will climate will climate change have on the bears of Katmai? Will we see different behaviors, different diseases?
Yeah,
what can we expect?
that's a good question, and it's hard to say. Certainly, bears are very adaptable. They're kind of one of the poster childs, I think, for adaptability in mammals. Their diet is extremely varied, so they're omnivores. They can probably eat more things than humans can. So if one food resource fails, then they may be able to find and take advantage of other food resources that maybe aren't preferred, or maybe they're less nutritious, but they have that ability. Maybe the thing that probably climate change is probably going to affect, has the potential to affect bears the most, is if it has impacts on salmon. Because the whole phenomenon that we see here at Brooks River is completely dependent on salmon. If salmon weren't here at Brooks River, nobody would be coming here to fish for rainbow trout that are 2 feet long, sometimes 30 inches long. The human history of Brooks River would be completely different, and we wouldn't see bears gathering here at all. I mean, so salmon really, truly are the keystone of Katmai's ecosystem. They're the thing that makes this place abundant. So if there's changes in the ocean, for example, or changes in the stream hydrology with salmon that help to decrease their numbers, then that can have a tremendous impact on the bears. Katmai, if there were no salmon here, I think Katmai would always have bears, because it's such a large area for bears to find food. But the densities probably would be closer to what you find in the interior of Alaska. To give you an idea of how many bears are in Katmai, about 4 million acres in size. So it's a big park. It's bigger than Yellowstone and Yosemite combined. And there's about 2,200 brown bears within the park. So we have some of the highest densities of brown bears anywhere in the world. Denali National Park, a couple million acres larger. Denali National Park and Preserve has 400 to 600 bears, I think, if I remember correctly. So their densities of bears in an ecosystem that is largely absent of salmon. They have a little bit of salmon, but not much. That shows you that tremendous difference. So again, the bears are highly dependent on salmon here. They're so conditioned to eat these fish that if the salmon run happened to fail, a lot of bears would have a very tough year. So with ocean acidification, we pump more CO2 into that atmosphere that gets absorbed by the ocean. It forms carbonic acid in the food web. The carbonic acid helps or hinders some microscopic plankton's ability to form shells, calcareous shells, because they can't absorb calcium as easily because it's being locked up by the chemical reaction between the carbonic acid and the calcium that's in the sea. That decreases the food source that the salmon eat, and of course that's going to decrease their rates in the sea, and so there might be less coming back to spawn. So with climate change, again, bears are very adaptable, but if something like climate change impacts the salmon, then that's where really I think we're going to see the impacts on bears.
And one thing I just thought of, you can correct me, I may be just totally off base here, but when the snow melts, the bear's den tends to collapse. So if the snow is melting earlier, could that cause issues for denning?
Timing could change. Bears go to their dens not because they're trying to avoid the cold. Really, they're going to their dens to avoid famine. Bears are they can't find enough food throughout the winter. If they were active to survive, they would lose their weight too rapidly because they'd be burning calories trying to just being just their overall metabolism. They would need more fuel to survive over the winter. So going to the den and hibernating is their very best energy conservation strategy. Some of the bear dens do collapse over time. I'm not sure how long that takes, because I've been in bear dens in June up on Dumpling Mountain, and they look pretty solid at the time. But I have also come to dens, and I, over later in the summer too, and I've seen them collapse. Whether or not they collapsed right in the springtime or whether they collapsed, later in the summer, I just don't know. That's hard to say. But with a warming climate, bears may go into dens at different times of the year too. So that's maybe one of those dynamics that is yet for us to really document and demonstrate with any sort of certainty. Oh yeah, let's turn the camera here. And David, if you want to narrate.
Yeah. Oh, he's just looking right at us now. You can zoom in a little.
Yeah, so let's zoom in. Take a look here. We have a bear marking a tree. This is one of those really remarkable things that we see here at Brooks River. This is the bear that's missing an ear, 814 lurch. When you're standing on the wildlife dune platforms like this, I mean, we see the bears walking just right down below us. It's actually kind of remarkable to have this opportunity. So we wanted to give you a quick glimpse of that. I thought you might stick around for it.
I think he saw us watching him and decided he wanted to scratch in privacy.
Got a little camera shot, I guess. So, that was a bear marking a tree over here. 814 is a pretty dominant bear, so when he's rubbing on the tree like that, he's leaving a scent behind. The less dominant bears can recognize his scent. They know, oh, this is a big dude was here recently, so maybe I need to be on alert. There was some really great behavior that I saw last night where 814, this same bear we just saw, was approaching the falls, and 747, who's more dominant than him, saw him coming and just started displaying the cowboy walking. And that's something that we didn't talk about when we were answering the question about dominance displays of behaviors to watch. Cowboy walking is a very exaggerated gait. They're swinging their hips wide, their rear hips, a very stiff-legged gait that they're doing. They're urinating all over the ground when they're doing this at the same time. So that when they're doing that, they're showing the other bears just how big and how bad they actually are. So look for that too. When 814 approaches the falls or 856 is at the falls, look for some cowboy walking. Look for them to. That poor willow on the island downstream of the falls. I don't know. Every year I'm like, I don't know if it's going to make it through another year because that's one of those trees that all the bears have to guard. So neat stuff that you can see just right on the fringes of the river.
Yeah. All right. How old are cubs when they go off on their own?
Here in Katmai, female bears will keep their cubs for 2 to 3 summers, and then they will wean them in the springtime after they emerge from their dens. So that depends on the female. Some females only keep them for two full summers and kick them out at the beginning of their third. Some keep them for another year. But yeah, on average, 2 to 3 summers. So you'll see very tiny cubs this year that are just spring cubs just coming out of the den. Probably, most likely. That you've seen this year, and some 2.5-year-olds too. I think I've been looking for them. I haven't had.
Yeah, I haven't seen them in a few weeks now.
Okay.
But yeah, they've been around a few times.
It's not uncommon for bears in the beginning of June to kind of cruise through, check things out, and then decide, I don't think the salmon are here yet. Well, I'm going to go wander someplace else.
Yep. Keep the family safe somewhere else.
There's risks involved with being around all these other bears. But they can't always find a place like that.
Right.
So they try to, the bears will precisely because they think it's worth the risk to try to get at this very rich food resource. You can catch, all the fish that
change over the season, right? In the very beginning, when they show up, they might not tolerate each other's presence quite as much, and then as time goes on, they get a little closer. It's like they're kind of get used to each other a little bit.
Hierarchy kind of settles down. Everyone kind of knows where they are at. Then especially once the mating season tapers down as well, 856 doesn't have to challenge every bear at the falls. He'll do that for a while, but then after things kind of settle down, then he's like, yeah, he knows his place. He knows his place. And so he doesn't have to expend as much energy doing that.
And so that being said, what do bears fight over?
The food and also access to food, appropriation of a place where you can catch food. and if you're a male bear, females, access to females. And a lot of the scars and wounds that you see on bears, that's from those three things. They're or food from another bear, and if you're a male bear, you're fighting for access. Black bears, different species.
Yep.
Probably been in North America, I think, longer than brown bears. Brown bears and grizzly bears and Kodiak bears are all the same species. They are they're different in some ways. Where you draw the distinction is kind of arbitrary. Bears are considered to be more inland. They, if you go to Yellowstone National Park, Jasper in Canada, there. Grizzly bears, not all brown bears are good. So Kodiak bears are another set of brown bear. And they are from the Kodiak archipelago, so Afognak Island and Kodiak Island, and that's just 30 miles from Katmai's coast. So we're real close to those bears here. And then, in Eurasia, I don't think they really distinguish. There's probably many species of brown bears around there, but generally all of those bears are kind of called in Kamchatka too. The Alaska Peninsula, generally they're just called brown bears here. Very, very closely genetics, but also habits too. On Katmai, they get pretty big. They don't quite get as big as Kodiak bears, but they get very large. So again, a big bear like 747 in the fall, 1,200 pounds, 1,200 pounds possibly. I mean, he's a monster.
Yeah.
So they can get really, really big, maybe not quite as big as the bears in Kodiak.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I like this question. Therefore, never attempting to mate with them, or is there some interbreeding?
There is, interbreeding. That's been documented here along the river. DNA studies that was going on here found out that a very in the last chapter, the bear's no longer seen. Mated with the female, sired a litter, and then ended up mating with one of the offspring of that to sire another litter. And I think so Divot, she's kind of famous because she got and we removed that off of her. She's the product, if I remember correctly. So don't a few thousand people on the internet. Right? It might be a product of that inbreeding that happened. Seems like if you're a really big dominant male, you are probably of cubs compared to how many male bears are here along the river.
All right, I've skipped a few, but we're down number 27, so I think we're doing pretty good.
Okay.
All right, this is a longer question. It seems we've seen the bigger male bears come back at much heavier weight than past years. Since not getting fish initially, could this be due to light snowpack and early berries and grasses?
I think it was due to a good salmon run last year. Yeah, the bears right now, before the salmon arrive, for the most part, they're subsisting on the body fat that they have stored from last year. So not only are bears right now eating to survive winter hibernation, but also that springtime period. The grass can offer a little bit of nutrition, but if you're a really big male, you're expending you extract by trying to digest it.
It's like celery.
Yeah. So it is kind of a starvation diet for them. Some bears have learned to hunt moose calves and caribou calves until June. So again, April, May, maybe they can find an animal carcass, but there's really not, in the interior of Katmai, not a whole lot of food resources. And then berries. It's an early year, but I don't think berries are this early.
Yeah.
Usually August is about the time when berries start to come in season.
I've seen some salmon berries, but they're not quite ready to eat yet.
Yeah,
At least
so-
for me.
Okay, yeah, they might be a little hard and tart
Yeah.
for this time of the year. So yeah, they're subsisting on the body fat that they stored last year. So they look so good because there was a lot of fish in the watershed last year.
This last one, not quite a question, but it says Mike in all caps. We'd love a play-by-play for old time's sake while you're here.
Yeah, actually, that's maybe a good way to conclude our chat. I think we're about an hour in, right?
Yep.
So, we'll be doing several play-by-plays while I'm here. Maybe starting as soon as tomorrow night. I'm not sure about that, but we'll let everybody know. We'll get on Twitter, we'll get on Facebook, we'll get on the Bearcam, and I'll be commenting as Ranger Mike on the Bearcam chat, so you can look. We'll be doing some play-by-plays, and what we do is we don't take viewer questions during those times. Platform generally in the evening. Guess the Falls platform is very. We just narrate the bear activity. So maybe Ranger Daniel can join us. Maybe Ranger Dave can join us during. Talk about the bear behavior. We'll identify some individual bears. We'll talk about salmon. Anything else that comes of interest. So it's kind of like us talking. Narrating a sporting event and interpreting the ecology of Brooks Falls. So I think they're a lot of fun. I'm glad people enjoy them. So look for us to do that in the evenings, Alaska time, 7, 8 o'clock, Alaska time. And I know that's late for you East Coasters, and it might be in the middle of the night for other people, but the bear activity is pretty good at that time of the year, or at that time of the night, and it's easier for me to get a little bit of elbow room up at Brooks Falls. So we'll be doing that. Also, in chatting in the comments, too. I think Dave, Daniel, and I want to set up some times to chat in the comments, just to answer viewer questions that way. So if you don't have the opportunity to watch the chat, we'll be doing that as well over the next couple of weeks. So it's June 28th right now, just the beginning of the season really here at Brooks River. So most exciting time I think is right now, and it's in all those really fascinating stories that are going to happen or yet to be told. So a lot of stuff is going to happen over the next month, and I'm excited to be a part of it again. So.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have any more questions, it's about an hour in. Again,
I think that's about it, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for everyone at Explore.org for helping us, to stream these cams live all over the world. We certainly appreciate you, all the camera operators as well, that are driving the cams and giving people glimpses into the lives of the animals that were here. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll join you soon.